come and do a presentation concerning our BOCES budget and what they offer the district, so I'd like to turn that over to BOCES at this time.
Well, good evening. Thank you for having us, allowing us to come out and take up some of your time. It's not very nice to have us go right after the kids like that. But we'll take any time we can get to talk to you about the efforts we're making up at TST BOCES with your partnership. Just to introduce the folks that are with me tonight, Assistant Superintendent for Administrative Services, Dave Parsons. Jeff Badalek is here, CTE Principal. Erlene Carr is our Interim Director of Exceptional Education. Dave Pitcher, Buildings and Grounds, Facilities, and lots of other programs that he's working with our school districts. And Rick Miller, our Director of Technology. Of course, you know John Nyhill, our board member from South Seneca. So we have a nice contingent here for you. If any questions during the presentation from one of those areas, that's what they're here for, to answer and to give you any information that you may need. So why BOCES exists is an important thing just to review very briefly, but the underlining parts are the most important parts that we, our goal is to have high quality services, shared services for the school districts, economical and efficient, that complement the educational programs of our school districts. One of the most important things about BOCES is when school districts can't offer a program on their own, but they can have a share with another school district facilitated by BOCES and make an opportunity for a child. That makes it worth having this organization. And we also, everything we do to try to find the efficiencies to save you money through shared services and to get you aid to support your classrooms is something that doesn't have to come out of your local tax base and can be generated through that shared service at BOCES. So we provide specialized educational opportunities, leadership for current educational initiatives, shared services, and cross contracts with other BOCES. I'm going to speak briefly about each one of those items. Our specialized educational services, mainly around instruction, are exceptional education, alternative education, and career and technical education. All three of those programs occur up on our campus, although there is some consulting that happens outside of the exceptional education realm that comes into your schools to support you as well. Leadership for current educational initiatives probably hasn't missed your attention about the Race to the Top initiative over the last 4 years. BOCES has provided the network team for this entire region to guide that initiative forward with the Common Core Learning Standards, teacher evaluation, data-driven instruction, highly trained people that have done a wonderful job, in my opinion, with your highly trained people to make some great things happen for kids. Really in our region, things have gone much more smoothly than many other regions. And I think it's because of the partnership that the school districts had with BOCES, the support of the leadership of each school district to ensure that their teachers were receiving the training. We made a commitment to make sure that our folks were highly trained to duplicate the state training in your districts. And we're seeing positive things happen in the classroom with kids throughout the region. The Dignity for All Students Act, we support the implementation of that act through our youth development specialists. All of our local districts take some consulting from that area, and that goes right down to consulting to help you with your training of your staff, faculty, your students, and helping you with your policies and codes of conduct. Response intervention, inclusive education, and specially designed instruction. We have consultants that work in school districts throughout the region as well to support you to ensure that the best things are happening for your neediest students. Shared services, long list here, and it's clearly not all of them that we offer, but these are the services where shares happen between school districts that generate BOCES aid. And if they don't generate the aid, they at least save you money from having a full-time person of your own, and that money you save can go back into your classroom. You can see there's a wide variety of those shared services offered through our different programs on our BOCES campus, but also through consulting right out into the field, into your districts. When we are not able to offer those shared services, we are usually very open to a cross contract with another BOCES that may offer a service for you. If the service is offered closer to you, we want to make sure that your kids get the services that they need, that your instructional staff get the services they need. So we try to facilitate cross contracts for you, even if we're not the ones that are offering it. And the policy service, state aid management, computer hardware, connectivity to broadband, collective bidding, those are just examples of we will facilitate that for you, even though another BOCES may provide the service. We will ensure that happens to the best of our ability and ensure that happens to the best of their ability and get you the best price whenever possible. So another thing that we do is we work with our component districts, and we'll seek these items out on our own, and that is to get grants. Any grant that we can get to support your program is tax dollars that don't have to go into your program from your local tax base. And you can see in the past year, we administered $1.5 million worth of grants. And we will continue. Some of these grants are ongoing, multi-year grants, and some of them are one-time grants. But we will continue to try to find funding any way we can to support your program and services. So now I'm going to turn it over to Dave to review some of the specific details of your district and its standing with BOCES and the administrative budget.
This particular slide really is for your district, highlights the information that is for your district. The resident weighted average daily attendance is 826 pupils for South Seneca. That's a number that New York State derives of your average daily attendance in this district. The percentage of your total Arwada compared to everyone else in the TST BOCES, South Seneca makes up about 6.04% of TST BOCES. Your current aid ratio for aidable services at BOCES is about 59%. The number of students that we currently have in the Career and Tech program is about 38. We don't cut students in half, but we do calculate them down to the tenths. We do actually do a 3-year average with our Career Tech numbers. That helps average or even out the spikes. 40 kids one year and 35 the next. Rather than Naomi having to try to figure out how do I budget for that one year and the following. We do a 3-year average, which makes it a whole lot easier to plan out your cash flow as far as Career Tech is concerned. For next year, the projected number is about 36. Number of students in our exceptional ed program is around 15. In our alternative program that is now on our campus, TST BOCES main campus, you currently send about a little over 4.5 FTE calculations for that. Your current contract is around $3.2 million at TST, which represents about 8.66% of our total budget. So that means that South Seneca is purchasing a little bit more than your size. Nothing wrong, nothing good, nothing bad, nothing good. It's really an indication of, is the district using somewhere near your size? Purchasing a little bit more is really, if it fits your BOCES or your district, that's good. Generates BOCES aid. So it's a good thing to see that. Some of our districts run a little bit low on that. Other ones run right on the money. But it's, like I say, it's all what works for your district. If you have any questions, by all means stop me. I'll just ramble right through. For next year, our budget is projected about 4.5% increase. And I know people choke on that when I say that. We are a service business. So that's not increase in our cost of operating, that's increase not only because of the operating, but increase in sales. When districts ask us to do more services, we have to increase our people that we have on staff, so on and so forth. So as a service business, 4.5% increase when everybody else is looking at 2s and below isn't a bad thing. That means you folks, you and districts and the rest of our components are asking us to do more services, which create more shares, which create more BOCES aid. So it's not a bad thing. I just want to make sure that people don't choke when they see that number. That represents about a $1.6 million increase in our total budget. And the indicators that are at the bottom of that page kind of gives you a rough idea of what is driving that increase or decrease. You can see three of them are the big increasers, and we have one that's a decreaser. And we'll touch on the actual numbers a little bit further on in the presentation, but that gives you a little idea of where they're coming from. This is the one big budget that you as a Board of Education gets to vote on, just like your public gets to vote on your budget when you put it out to them. We put a budget together, we bring it to you, we present it to you, answer questions, whatever you may have. If everything is successful and it's adopted, then we are locked in not spending one penny more than that. So we do spend a little bit of time with that, make sure everybody is comfortable with where our numbers are with these. As you can see, salary and fringe is really the biggest driver, as it is in most budgets. Anything that was under control that we could keep a handle on, we tried to keep very flat. The one big number there is our retiree health insurance and dental insurance. Anyone that retires from TST BOCES, no matter where they work, whether it was career tech, exceptional ed, maintenance, administration, it doesn't matter. When they retire, if they're entitled to any type of health or dental retirement benefit, it goes in that line and it has to be charged in our administrative budget by SED regs. I know that looks like a big number. It's a third of our budget. But when I talk to my counterparts in the other BOCES, they're envious because they're running 50 and 60% of their budgets, and we're running about a third. It's still not a lot. Like, I don't like it. It's not good. But when I compare to my counterparts, I'll take it. So when we get all said and done with the budget itself, we're about at 2.15%. I don't see interest taking a huge jump, so I left that flat. So when we get all said and done, taking the anticipated revenues out, we're at about a 2.2% increase to our component districts. So any questions on that one? Because that is the one that you get a chance to say yay or nay to. All right. Salary and fringe, we are in negotiations currently with our teachers' bargaining unit, so I really can't publish numbers there. But in our health insurance, we did increase our health cost by 7% with our cooperative, which I will have to say national trends are up in the 9 to 10%. So I feel I don't like it again, but it's still better than other places in the world. I do have to budget 6 new retirees in that. That health insurance itself represents about 0.6% of our total budget just for health insurance. Retirement is a whole lot better picture this year than it was last. It's still not great, but it's better than it was last. We were looking at about a 25% increase in that particular budget last year. It's kind of flattened out a little bit, not the huge jumps that we did the last 2 years, so that is about a little over 7.25% increase in that. And that alone represents 1.82% of our budget. And the other benefits, such as dental and so on and so forth, represent about 0.13% of our total budget. Our capital budget for the coming year is going to be around $307,000. It currently is about $628,000. A year ago, we talked with the superintendents. We did a second energy performance contract. And rather than borrowing $317,000 and going through all those processes to borrow, the superintendent said, put it in this year's capital budget, in the current one we're in, 13-14, and we'll get it paid for and get it over with, so we can generate the savings without having to pay interest. So that will go from the $628,000 in the current budget down to $307,000 for next year. That $307,000 is the biggest chunk of that is our energy performance contract. The first one we did, we had to put a lease on that in order to pay for it. That was about $2.8 million, and we will pay on that for about 12 and a half years. So we've got about 9+ years left on that. So that's where the big chunk of that $307,000 is. Any questions with our capital budget? We aren't allowed to have an unappropriated fund balance at the end of the year. Whatever is left in our budgets that we did not spend, we have to recalculate the same direction, the same way it was paid in by the districts, whether it was an RWADA, percentage of FTEs, a percentage of service. However you folks paid the bill, if there's anything left, we back it out the same calculation and send it back in a refund. So we do start our budget every year at zero. We have to build that budget from the ground up every year by state statute. That's the way it works. So we do not have reserves such as an unappropriated. The next slide actually does show what we do have in reserves that are available to BOCES. We do have a capital reserve. We don't fund it at the present time. Unemployment, we are self-funded for unemployment. So we do, if somebody goes out on unemployment and we have to pay an unemployment claim, the state pays the claim, they send us the bill, we pay it out of that. About 3 years ago when they decided to end the Even Start program, we had about 12 people that we laid off for about a $50,000 hit in that line. So that's why we have that type of reserve. It's built back up to where I'm almost comfortable again to where it ought to be. So that's one that we will use there. The insurance and the flex reserve, that one is when we have to pay for the insurance over the summer. We've got that money set aside for any of the employees that are 10-month people. We've collected their money. We have to pay the insurance during that time, so we put that off in that one. Any flex programs, we are also self-funded for dental, so we have to have a reserve to cover that expense. And the last one is a career tech reserve. We, again, don't fund that one currently, but we will start looking at both of the ones that are unfunded to see if it's time to start putting something away. Any questions? Thanks.
These are program budgets for each of the different programs run through the BOCES, showing you the budget, which is about 9% change of the total budget. This is the rest of the budget. This is primarily driven by requests from school districts, whether it's for an instructional program or some kind of service with BOCES or cross contracts. And you can see what's driving the increase that we went over with you before. Look at the bottom of cross contracts. Some of that is technology purchasing. Some of the things people are doing cross contracting with BOCES has caused an increase there. Non-instructional support. People who have signed up now and come on board maybe with additional CPO services, energy management. We have other folks looking at other ways of sharing between districts, adding services to, just taking off the local goal and put it through a BOCES service so we can generate aid. Another big one up there is itinerants. We have more districts wanting to share people in the areas you can see where we do offer itinerants in Spanish, art, ESL, music, school counseling, home careers, exceptional ed, school lunch services, and internal auditors. We have more people that signed on to those services this year. We believe, obviously, as the budgets have been looked at much closer this year, folks are like, let's try to lower our FTE of a particular position and share it with another school district, run that through BOCES, so we not only save the money on the share, but we get BOCES aid on the share. There is an incentive to do that. As you can see, we've got a double-digit increase in requests for those. The other one, CTE, up over 4%. One of the things that we do on the BOCES is CTE has the largest footprint on our BOCES as far as the number of buildings and square footage that it's using, and anything that touches CTE, we try to send as many of the cross charges on our BOCES for budgets towards CTE. One of the reasons for that is if we charge it to exceptional ed, you don't receive aid on it. If we charge it to CTE budgets, it increases your aid on that. So anything CTE touches, we will charge some of those on-campus services to generate the aid for your school district. We want that money going back into your classrooms and not out into outer space. So we'd much rather generate more aid for you so you can save some of the taxpayer dollars. Any questions on our program budgets?
Can you just run through maybe quickly, or would you like to hear what programs?
Say again?
technology, nursing, and health careers. Culinary arts, going to seed building, we have heavy equipment, auto technology, auto body, welding, and we have animal science and construction technology, 13 career tech programs, 2 Visions programs, which are at Cornell, based at Cornell, and that's life sciences, and also Cuba Medical Center, health sciences. In addition, we have 3 World of Work programs, which is an intermediate program with introductory level print tech classes. We have World of Work outdoor power equipment, a career exploration class that puts kids in internship placements, and also a food service class, which is early culinary.
Our 8th grade just visited this week. Had a great time. Round Buzz, the 8th graders coming back visiting this program.
So we have a lot of youngsters on campus. Yes. Take your time.
Any other questions on our program budgets? New and expanded services, we have expanded our central business office. We find every year we have more and more demand for that. The business officials work together on that to talk about what additional programs in the future. We've had additional programs come on, expand shared tax collecting. We also moved one of our programs out of our instructional services and into the distance learning COSER. That is our Plato program, which is an online learning credit recovery program for students. One of the reasons we separated that off is A, that's where it belongs, but B, we want to expand online learning. We received the VAP grant. That's coming to an end. It's virtual advanced placement. We've written courses, virtual and advanced placement. This coming year, it will be run as a service from Cuba, Onondaga, BOCES for the entire JMT region, which is Cuba, Onondaga, Oswego, OCM, BOCES, and us. And hopefully the year after that, each one of those BOCES will then take their own. We built enough cadre of students to be on online learning. We'll have our own. So that's why we separated that out. Shared treasurer services, instructional technology support, we want to expand. We are expanding that area. In fact, this year, there's an additional share of instructional technology this year, and in the model schools, more support directly to local schools in that area. We relocated the community school to main campus to be our alternative school, more opportunities for students. More of our alternative kids are now in CTE programs than in the past because they walk across the street and take advantage of them. So we're finding some nice shares right on our campus to even save some money within the BOCES programs by sharing some things moving forward out there all on campus. The energy performance contract, the second one we just talked about, that continues to just about come to completion and will generate savings over time for all of our local districts, depending on our WADA share. We're looking at expanding into human resources management, shared transportation maintenance service. The shared transportation maintenance service is going to be part of a transportation study that South Seneca has signed on to be part of. It's going on right now, the study with a consultant. We'll have results early summer, I would imagine, and there'll be some big picture proposals for shared transportation, but there'll also be some advice on how you can have savings in your local district in transportation. Transportation is aided very highly, but you remember, you come up with the money first, so any way you can save money is a positive thing anyway. And early college COSER, we're working with TC3. They've received a grant to expand the early college program, which is an educational program for seniors right on the campus of TC3. It will be a full-time program for them. First year, very low cost because of the grant. Second year, obviously, we will gradually expand that. Hopefully, we can get the cadre of students. Because the more students you get into the program, the least expensive it is for each component school district. Any questions on our expanded services?
When will that early college?
We're looking at trying to get it going this year for 14-15. We've got a conversation with the superintendents, we've taken some initial information back, and we have a TC3 with the superintendents. We'll see where that goes this spring. So by law, the component boards have to vote on the administrative budget that Dave went through with you earlier. It always has to happen between April 16th and the 30th. This year, the vote has taken place on Wednesday, April 23rd. So all of our voting boards will meet that evening to take that vote. Any other questions? Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for all coming. I appreciate the information. It's good for us to see that every year, so thank you. We'll move on now to our budget presentation. Naomi?
This budget's going to be presentation's going to be a little longer than usual. We didn't have a board meeting last week. We did have some budgets that came in. They've now been consolidated, so what you're going to see tonight are all the departments as of this point. Facilities, transportation, the business and district offices, building budget, and the final salary projections will be included. Familiar slide, I know, talking about what state aid has done is specifically for the district over the last 5 years. I think it's just a real eye-opener to show visually this accumulated gap elimination adjustment and the monies that the district doesn't have to use to operate. That's almost $6 million cumulative that the district has not received. So moving on to facilities department. This budget has gone up 3% this year. We've worked with many of our vendors and certainly with our utilities to be able to fine-tune our budgets as much as possible and absorb contingencies when we can. But over 5 years, we were not able to keep this budget flat, so it increased at 3%. Transportation, there is a decrease of 14%, and that is predominantly because of, we find the category here, the very first line, equipment. When we first talked about bus replacement, we weren't sure what our replacement schedule was going to be. We suspended it for a couple of years, if you recall. We now are in a position where we need to start replacing our buses. They're 7 years old. Biggest concern is passing DOT inspections. So we will be replacing 1 bus this year, 2 buses next year, and on a regular replacement schedule of 3 buses a year to keep on the 7-year replacement schedule.
Go back to the facilities budget.
Yep.
You mentioned that it was flat for how many years?
For 3 years, we were going to keep it flat or even reduced in some cases.
All right, I see.
Understand.
Business and district offices, this budget has gone up 5.56% for many of the same reasons. This is the administrative side, Board of Education's budget, the superintendent, the business office. We've also tried to keep this flat over the last few years, and we weren't able to do it this year. In addition, because of all the changes relating to gap elimination, or at least the advocacy needed to address gap elimination, the board has been active, the superintendent has been active. These are all areas that we expect to continue to be active as we advocate for our district in future funds. But that budget has increased 5.5%. Moving on to the building budgets, both new principals have worked very hard to keep budgets as flat or slightly reduced, as you'll see in a moment. I'm going to review their budgets with you quickly, and please feel free to call on either of them to be able to go into any information in more detail. I'll start with the elementary. This budget work was prepared by the prior principal, and it was reviewed by Adam. Overall, the budget is down $884. Not a lot, but it has been down 3-4 years, I believe, in a row. So they've been certainly in keeping the rest of the departments trying to keep their supplies, contractual equipment obligations as flat as possible. Teachers were very fiscally responsible preparing the budgets. 4 grade levels actually decreased, 2 increased. Special areas, we had 2 slight increases, 2 slight decreases, 2 remained even. Field trip expenses remained the same. we certainly take full advantage of our field trips. They're very beneficial for our students. Furniture and equipment requests were met by using items available in storage. We've had a couple of capital projects, we've moved equipment around. We certainly want to pull from those areas first before we buy new furniture and equipment. Textbooks and curriculum needs can be met by ordering copies from the BOCES print shop. BOCES print shop is an aidable category, as BOCES just described to you. The reason we are spending more than our size, right? Our size is 6%, we're spending almost 9%, is because of that aided category, and instead of spending through our budget, we're able to do an aided category, so it's a big savings for the district to operate that way. BOCES print shop is a perfect example. We could print it here, but we wouldn't receive any aid on it. If we print it through BOCES, we do receive 60% back, 60 cents back on every dollar.
Naomi, before you move on, Adam, I guess to question to you. I know that in the past 3 or 4 years, we have pretty much asked every building principal to cut and, check and see if there's materials that they don't need and so on. I'd have to say that over the past 3 or 4 years, that has happened. And I'm hoping that you're looking at this where there's not any danger of people going without things to be able to teach in the right manners in the classrooms and so on and so forth. I understand that we need to try to keep things flat, but I also don't want to see us not have the...
Right, I'd say I looked at every teacher's proposal, and there was one request that was significant, and it had to do with furniture, and met with the teacher. We went up to storage, and everything that she wanted we already had. So that was the only concern out of the entire proposal from every teacher.
So it's just showing the line item detail here. You can see it went down 1%. And as Mike is pointing out, we certainly don't want our teachers not to have the supplies that they need going forward, but they have been our partners as we go through this budget process and really work to keep their budgets down when possible. Middle and high school, the secondary budget, this 14-15 budget is expected to remain at current levels. And again, John was able to bring it in slightly below. Rather than designate set amounts for each department, teachers identified specific needs. And of course, these will vary year by year. The funding of special initiatives can be accomplished by the resulting controlled expenditures you see in the budget. It also allows the secondary school flexibility to address any moderate unexpected expenditures. So looking at the middle school budget, again, slightly down. High school budget, slightly down. Some areas, if you looked at each department or math versus English versus social studies, some are up 1 year, some are down 1 year. John was able to continue with what is it that you actually need that we can provide for you, and not every department needs as much as they did the year before, and then some do need more than they had the year before. So it is averaged out to just about flat. Questions for John before we go on? District-wide salaries. This is all salaries in all departments. Steve, would you like to discuss this?
Yeah, I went into quite a bit of detail last month on our historical staffing levels. Talked a lot about how we've lost about 41 positions since the gap elimination adjustment began. There's no more in-depth conversation that happens behind the scenes during budget season than staffing, because the thing that has the highest impact and we have the most control over. I think it's fair to say that we've been in a fairly aggressive cutting mode for the last few years. 41 positions is just incredibly painful for a district our size. And I think that some of our neighboring districts are now coming to the same realization that we came to a few years ago. So it's curious and a little weird that, when we compare last year's staffing to the proposed staffing, that in our case it's up a little bit. But the story behind this is the addition of one new elementary teacher. We've been a little bit alarmed by the class sizes in the elementary building. The truth is we could probably use 3 more elementary teachers, but the compromise was to go with 1. And then the rest of these slight adjustments here are bringing part-time staff to full-time. The truth is that when you look at the efficiency of a part-time staff person, when you have a person who's working half-time for a lot of reasons, it's not even really the same thing as getting half the amount of efficiency. And so after lengthy discussions, we've decided that in addition to ending the municipal agreement with Romulus for the 2 shared people, we'll propose to bring those people back full-time. And also most of the other people that we have in the instructional side that are part-time, we can now consider bringing them to full-time without having a major, gigantic impact on last year's budget to this year's budget. So as curious as it is to look at 73 to 77, I can assure you that there's hours and hours of work that goes into that, and probably the truest statement of all is that it's sort of a necessary adjustment. It's possible that we scraped a little bit too deep, and now we're going to make that little bit of an adjustment moving forward. I think that for the small amount of impact FTE-wise, it's going to make a giant impact on our program in a positive way, without, again, breaking the bank. So, I have a feeling that the conversations in our neighboring districts, we can turn the clock back a few years and imagine what they're going through right now. We've done it already, so we're in a position now where we're a little bit more stable.
So projected staffing salaries for 14-15 is an increase of 5.2%. That does include the restorations as well as contractual obligations with our various units. So, as I said, all departments are in at this point, and a review of the budget budget for the current year that we're operating under, $21,933,255. The proposed 14-15 budget, $22,305,723. That is a 1.7% budget-to-budget increase.
Naomi, what did you start out as the projected budget increase? Wasn't it 3 something?
It was 3.15%. So we brought it down to 1.7 department by department.
We're in discussion with 3 units in collective bargaining, is that correct?
That's right.
And how do we handle that in anticipation of possibly increases for them?
Well, just as we budget for any contingency, gap elimination, lack of state aid, we build in contingencies within our budget as we go forward.
Listen, thank you.
Yep. So, adding to what you're describing here, adjustments, how do we come up with a 1.7%? I just showed you a few budgets that increased 3% and so on. So how were we able to do it? Well, we had some reductions in special education costs. You saw that a couple of board meetings ago. We were able to adjust our staffing levels, as Steve just described, to serve our current programs. We are able to offer a full sports schedule with South Seneca colors and team names. We're restoring many of those as one team. We were able to match our computer technology budget to expanding technology needs within the district. We were also able to utilize matching state aid funds for purchases. Again, that increase in BOCES that they described is a benefit to the district because we get 60 cents back for every dollar that we spend. And we utilize $500,000 in budget contingency. This is important because over the almost 5 years now that I've been here, there has been, I think it's safe to say, crisis mode. We've been dealing with lack of funding. cutbacks, unfunded mandates, all those had to be anticipated in some monetary way. So the budget has contained a contingency to prepare for as much as we could possibly prepare for. It will still be there, it just does not need to be as great. So part of the budget process going forward is to absorb some of that contingency to be able to give a realistic budget-to-budget increase. So we utilize $500,000 in that contingency within this budget. That combined with reserves put that projection out that we described in the last couple of budget meetings. So I'm always asked what happens if the budget is voted down. Well, we can propose a new budget with attainable tax levy increase. There may be possible staff and expenditure cuts if that occurs, and then we would re-present our budget to the public on June 17th. Or the other option would be to go to a contingent budget. That's a little more difficult because that means a tax levy of 0% increase. That has an impact of $190,000 in terms of a decrease in our budget.
Naomi, before you move on, you stated that it would be easier to predict budget to budget with that contingency involved.
It's not easier, it's more realistic.
Okay,
Without that.
realistic.
Yeah.
Is that saying that what we're always asking for is a 3-year projection?
Correct.
Is that making those 3-year projections even a little more realistic too?
They are. They're going to be, our budgets over the next 6 years are going to be a lot tighter because we'll be using and absorbing this contingency each year, what's left, as well as utilizing some of our reserves. Now, this is projecting no changes in state aid,
Right.
no changes in gap elimination adjustment.
Right.
So we can be optimistic, but we also need to be able to be a little guarded going forward. Here's what a possible contingent budget might look like. Here's our proposed budget, $22 million, 1.7% budget-to-budget increase, tax levy cap, 2.66, we discussed that at the last board meeting. We would maintain and expand our restorations of our staffing. That includes the adjustment of 3.95 FTE staff. We could continue to purchase equipment as needed. We could continue to offer facility use to our community, and we could continue to include in our classroom budget supplies that students need. In a contingent budget, some of that changes. First of all, our budget would be reduced, $22,115,977. That would be a 0.8% budget-to-budget increase. Tax levy would be at 0. There may be staff and program cuts up to that $190,000 I described. We would not be able to purchase any new or existing equipment. This is state law. Buses, computers, science equipment, musical instruments, those all fall under that category. We would have to charge the community to use our facilities, and we would be limited in the supplies that we could offer students in our classroom budgets. So a contingent budget is a significant change from the proposed budget. So challenges to the district. This is nothing new. We've been talking about this for quite some time. We've had deductions in aid and therefore deductions or reductions for our budgets. The gap elimination reduction is 4 years going into 14-15, over $5 million. It will be almost $6 million by the time we go into 14-15 if the governor's budget stays. The CPI or Consumer Price Index of 1.46%. You have to tell my gas bill and my utility bill that it's only supposed to increase 1.46 because that's not the reality that we've experienced. Our expenditures have increased 3 to 7%. Modest if you compare, as Dave Parsons says, to other BOCES and other districts, but those are still high enough that it's difficult to go budget to budget with those amounts. Pensions, healthcare has really driven those higher expenditures. Increases in aid and revenue, there really haven't been much. The New York State aid increase of new money, we talked about this where I did some detail on how much was reimbursing the district for expenses, how much was actually new money, meaning we didn't have to spend it to get it. It was actually less than 1% to the district. and the property tax cap that we've been living under can be restricted to as little as 2%. So these are major challenges we've been budgeting under, which gets us to choosing a tax levy. So what are our choices? Well, we can request higher than the tax cap, and that tax cap amount for us this year is 2.66%. The pluses of requesting a higher tax levy from our community is we would use less reserves. We have a substantial, almost $1 million that supplements our revenue right now. We would use less of that if we went above the tax cap. It would increase our longevity. This gets to that last man standing that we've talked about over the years. The minuses of going above the tax cap, we now need 60% voter approval. What would that second vote be at? Would it pass? If it didn't, we would go to contingency, and we know that's an automatic 0% increase. Or we could stay at or below that cap. The plus is there, we need 50% voter approval. We may only need to present one budget. The minuses, the opposite of the pluses for going higher than the cap. We would use more reserves, and we would last less times. That longevity, that was our goal at the beginning of this budget process. So here are some potential tax rate scenarios for the board to consider tonight. I looked at anywhere from 2% to 4%. And just a reminder, our tax cap calculation is 2.66. So I won't go through each of these numbers. I know the board and probably the public has seen this before, but let's just take 2% so we can kind of identify what we're looking at as we make our decision. That tax levy increase of 2% would be a tax levy increase to revenue of 145, almost 146,000. The tax rate would be $16.88, which means on a $100,000 home, it would be $1,689 for the year. That's a $32.70 increase in the tax bill. That translates to $2.72 a month. But we would be using reserves, and again, this is part of that longevity, we would be using reserves of about $900,000. As you look forward on each increase in tax levy proposal, the main number to really look at is the use of reserves, which is the bottom of the column. So at 2%, we would use $900,000. If I skip over to 2.6%, which is still below our cap, we're using about $44,000 less in reserves. And remember, that's every year going forward. When we use less today, we use less every year. We could look as high as 4%, so if I go down to 4% below, and I see what would the use of reserves be in that case, it would be $100,000 less, or almost $150,000 where we are at 2%. So these are the considerations as the board considers the tax levy increase.
I think last year we reached pretty high to make sure that we'd be able to be in the position that we were in today. We asked our community to vote on a tax cap amount, a tax levy amount that was higher than the tax cap, and we heard from the community, and then we brought it back down to the tax cap, and we heard again from the community loudly and supported it by over 70% vote. In my heart always tells me that I need to think of more than just to get from here to next year, but from here to the next 10 years. And so I'm always thinking that, you know, we need to continue to ask our community how long they want to keep our district here at South Seneca. I feel very comfortable and satisfied to where we are now financially compared to where we were looking at finances 2 or 3 years ago. Dave, I think you can remember that. Roger, I believe you too also. But at the same time, I think our community has supported us so much to the point that, my recommendation is going to be to stay pretty close to the tax cap this year. I think we've asked our community numerous times to support what we're doing. I think they've seen that what the board and the administration and the staff are doing with the funds that are received here is worthwhile and fruitful for the students. And so that's my recommendation, but I need to hear from the rest of the board on your thoughts. And we need to give Naomi a number tonight so that she can prepare for the upcoming resolution and the vote, which will be in our April 9th meeting. Is that correct?
The next board meeting.
The next board meeting. So.
I was thinking at home. Baby steps in this period of time, where we're becoming that standalone district. We're showing that we were ahead of the game. Perhaps, if this is that open to the rest of the community, they'll realize that if we stay at the tax cap, that might pass better than trying to raise and get more funds. We are coming up with some staffing with contingency funds, so there was some money there. And you're right about that longevity, but the community's going to have to face it sooner or later, however you want to look at it, because remember when we were looking at the merger and you saw the tax rate at Waterloo, Seneca Falls, Romulus, and we could include our neighbors, Trumansburg, we're low. So sooner or later, they're going to have to realize that we need to step up. If we can get by for a few years, 2% right now, I'm for that.
The only thing I want to be careful of is I've seen a lot of budgets over the past 13 years, okay? And I saw some budgets that came through that were minimal increases at times. And it was okay, because we were okay financially to be able to do that. I just want to be careful not to shortchange the kids and keep a budget down to, careful how I say it, not please the community, but to make sure we pass our budget. I think that we want to make sure that we put a budget out there that's going to provide what is necessary for our students and give the community the opportunity to say yes or no to that. Because we do have that opportunity. We do have the opportunity to put a budget out there that's above the tax cap, and if it's voted down, we can go out again at the tax cap as we did last year. Do we want to do that again? Like I said, I think I'm okay with staying at the tax cap. I'm not okay going below it because I don't see us being fiscally responsible by going below it. And that's what I saw happen years ago. So.
And I do want to caution you, as Mike is bringing up the concern about going below. We don't know what the tax cap will be next year. It's all based on numbers that the state hands down and calculated. So as we've seen in the 3 years that we've been doing this, we've gone from anywhere from -1.5% up to almost 5% in terms of a sway of rates. So anything, for lack of a better term, that you leave on the table this year, you might need next year. So staying at the tax cap can afford you that.
Yeah, I'm certainly in favor of staying at or below the tax cap. We don't know what this tax freeze proposal of the governor is going to do. We don't know whether it's going to be passed by the legislature, but it was still on the table as of this afternoon. And we've discussed that. I think we want to not upset our constituency by going above the tax cap.
I would agree with, especially agree with Roger, with the fact that what he said, that at some point, we're going to have to pass the bill and by keeping
I agree with you there in all your comments, and I think that the important thing is that we have to give a lot of credit to the boards for us and the administration, and especially Naomi and Steve and Janie's work over the past 5 or 6 years, because with the kind of work that we all did to put us where we are today to make this decision, that we don't have to go out 3 or 4% above the tax cap just to be able to keep the programs that we have, is a good thing. And I think you're right, we need to have the confidence of the community so that when we do come to them and say, we need your help now, they feel comfortable and trust the fact that we're not kidding. We know that there's that need for that help. So.
So Dave, I heard you say at or below. Are you okay with
at the 2.66?
Yes, I am. I'm with you. Concerned about our fund balance, and I don't want to spend it, but I think we have to be responsible with our program and our staff and our students, and I think that what's been proposed at the tax cap is very reasonable and a good compromise given all the pressures we're under.
I left a email, both Kenny and Craig are out of town, and so I had communicated them through email about what their thoughts were, and I haven't heard, but I have 5 at the table tonight saying tax cap. I think, in my opinion, they both would agree to that. So I'm waiting for their response. If I hear something different, I'll let you know, but right now I haven't heard back from them. So at this time, I think we would like to move forward with the proposed budget at the 2.66 tax increase.
Okay, so my final budget for next board meeting will include that as a tax levy increase.
Just want to throw something out. I read it maybe from Steve, maybe from you. Will the legislature change that 50% of the population of your community? If you go over the tax cap, you got to get 60. Will they change that eventually? I'm thinking I heard it somewhere. And could that affect us in the long term?
The only thing I can say in response to that is that the conversation is raging. And it's tremendous pressure in many, many directions. In some ways, it's too many directions. Right now, what's going on this week is all these behind closed doors negotiations. The Assembly has proposed their budget, the Senate has proposed its budget, the Governor has proposed his budget, so we got 3 different proposals that are there, and they seem to be talking. I find myself flooded with more information than I can almost digest because it just keeps coming. And one of the reasons it's so overwhelming is that they're talking about so many things at once now. Take your choice. The Common Core, the tax cap, the exemptions, the charter schools, the pre-K conversation, the list goes on and on, circuit breakers. And so, when you ask the question, what's the will to keep that, and yet he hasn't backed down one iota about it. So there really is no crystal ball that can say one way or the other, but the signs at this point is that it's going to be here for a while to deal with. In many ways, it's it's yet another cause for resentment. Suddenly the individual school districts become the bad guys at every turn. One of the things that I love about this community and about this district is that we do seem to recognize that we're in this together. Talked a lot about pride of program through this whole budget season here. Everybody that I talk to seems to understand what the situation is. I think that we've done a good job of communicating the need for the gap elimination adjustment to go away. I happen to know for a fact that it's on the minds of all the legislators. I don't know that they're going to come through for us. what I'm hearing is, a lot of talk about all these other things, not to mention the pressures every time you add $1 to a charter school program or a New York City pre-K program, it takes $1 away from what they have to do to reduce the GEA. And so, right now I'm getting a lot of promises about, a couple of years down the road the GEA will be gone. But it doesn't seem like it's going to take as big of a bite out of it as we would have hoped this year. The best that I can say to everybody is keep this on your minds. Take the opportunity to communicate with these legislators. They should hear from you. And let's keep the message very simple, which is that the highest impact thing on our budget is the gap elimination adjustment. The sooner that goes away, the better position that we'll all be in. It's something that will help every single district in the state, but it helps the lower income districts, the poorer districts, at a much higher impact than the wealthier districts. And so, it's a simple issue that needs the highest amount of pressure, I think. There's a lot of talk about foundation aid, and some people make the argument that $1 is $1, and you can't argue with that. If we get more foundation aid and less reduction of the gap elimination, it all comes out together. But it seems like foundation aid is a lot more complicated than the simple fact that they're withholding state aid in the form of the gap elimination adjustment. So you started out asking about the tax cap, and here I am talking about gap elimination adjustment, so I'll stop.
So this conversation has been swirling all over. We've been talking about whether or not we should budget at the tax rate. And that's what we told, do you understand the conversation? A little bit. So we haven't done our job very well. We haven't explained it so that people understand. So, who would like to take care of it?
So what the district does is it puts a budget together and it says these are our expenditures for the year. And schools get money from the state and they also get support from their community. So the school puts together all the expenditures, compares it to the revenue that is going to be received from the state. We call it revenue. And we say, what's left? Where's our gap? Where do we need to make that whole? And that's where we look at what the tax levy will be. So that's what all the community members, people here and live around in the district, will decide what they're willing to pay to be able to keep the district providing the programs that it does. The tax cap is something the state says, well, wait a minute. We want you to be able to communicate with the public, but we're going to put limits on what you can ask from your community. And it's based on 8 different pieces. So I might say, okay, you take this number, this number, this number that the state sends you, and you come up with a calculation. That percentage is what the board has to decide. Is that the percentage, or do we want to ask the community to spend more, or do we want the community to spend less? Not a hard decision, except there's a little limitation that the state puts on there. It says if you ask for more, you have to have more people in your community support it. If you ask for less people need to approve that. How'd I do it? Steve, did you want to add something?
I think I could probably say it even simpler than that. So when you vote for stuff, and if you're voting for 2 different things, the person who gets more votes wins. But you just got to get one more vote than the other side, right? So if we stay under this number, this tax cap number that you keep hearing about, then that's the way it works. So we only need to have one person vote yes more than the people that vote no. But if we go over that, if we say, nope, we need more money than that, so community, please, can you vote for, we want to have you pay more? If we go over that number, then it's 60% we have to get. So even if, this is exactly what happened last year at our votes. we got 52%, so 52% of the people voted yes, but we still didn't get to pass our budget because we had to get 60%. And so that's what we've been talking about. And if you didn't follow it, the board just decided, like, we're not going to do that. We're just going to stay right at the cap, so we only need 50% to pass the budget. So that's how that works. Okay?
What the board is stating that
Can't hear you.
work that we, Naomi and the departments have done to let us know how much it's going to cost. Us deciding to stay at the cap means that work is good. That means we pay our bills. By stating this funky number that the state sets. See her? Not quite so confusing. Because you were looking. Plus, when they explain to you, I get it.
We've heard this a few times, that's why we can speak about it. It takes a while, you gotta hear it a few times. So to finish up the presentation, I wasn't sure where the board was gonna end up as far as a proposed tax levy increase. So I just put a summary slide assuming 2.6%. Obviously, it'll be slightly more than this because I'm gonna use 2.66% in my calculations. But the current tax rate per thousand, so this is $16.55 per thousand of assessment, will increase to $16.98, almost $17 once we do the 2.66%. So what kind of impact will that be? Well, if a house is assessed at $100,000, the proposed tax increase will be $43. If you look at that from a monthly standpoint, that's $3.58. I'm not going to go through the whole chart, I'll just show one more. A house assessed at $200,000, that's an $86 annual increase, or $7.17 per month to continue the district with its programs that it currently has. So Mike was asking, where did we start from? I think this gives a quick summary. We started at 3.15% back in January, our rollover budget. Every month, every board meeting, which is twice a month actually, we were able to tweak that a little bit, use up some of our contingency. So as of today, March 26th, we have a 1.7% budget-to-budget increase. This will be summarized and presented to the board on April 9th. You will at that point approve, there'll be a resolution to approve the final budget, and you will approve that annual document that we create, the property tax report card that we submit to state ed, and their calculations do all their summaries of all the districts and all their budgets. Just a reminder, our budget hearing will be May 13th, 7 o'clock in the auditorium here, and the vote will be held in Interlaken this year on May 20th, 1 to 8 p.m. Thank you.
The hearing is the 13th.
Hearing is the 13th.
Thank you, Naomi. If no questions for Naomi, we'll move on to superintendent's report.
All right, so I already talked about this week in Albany. I'm heading to Albany after this meeting, and I will actually get a chance to connect once again with our representatives. I've been talking to them. I think they're pretty well aware of where I stand, and just following the conversation as it goes day by day. There is a big push now that says that you can still influence things. If anybody needs any help about how to contact your legislator, just ask about that. There are places now you can go and just click on form letters and send those. And so, being my first time through this whole cycle, I'm very interested to see what changes just from now until, if they're going to do it on time, it's got to be done by Friday.